if you train with live blade, one of the best ways to train is slow, right? That is an internal process, a personal process that requires great attention that most people just don't have the patience for. Most people that when they play with a live blade, it's because they think it's cool and they want to look cool. Is my impression. My father was very much cautious, if not outright against the use of live blade in training, especially in demonstrations. Though we were required to train with live blade, which is an interesting contrast there. I'm against it, but you have to do it, kind of thing, right? So there's some kind of reversal there that maybe the listener would have a hard time trying to understand. But the reason why is because if you don't come into it with the right mindset, then you won't get the benefit that you can from it, and you'll ultimately end up cutting yourself most of the time. Like most of the time that I've seen people that shouldn't train with the live blade when I was coming up, either because I heard about it or I saw it, is they ended up cutting themselves, and usually very, very badly.
Hmm.
The last time that my father saw me, I was a teenager at the time. I was maybe 18 or 19. I think it was about 18 or 19. I was doing a carenza, a free form, as part of a demonstration with a live. I don't know if it was a Chris or a Barong, but it was one of those. That was part of what we were going to do for that. But he was not. He wanted me to do it. He let me do it, but he was not excited about it because he all he could see was me cut myself because he'd seen so many of his students do the same thing. I was just doing the art. I think that when you get involved and enamored with the way it looks, you forget where you are, and you become unaware, at least briefly, of where that edge is in proximity of your own flesh.
That
Right.
makes
I
total.
personally have never cut myself with a live blade, but I have hit myself many times with tabak toyak and with baston. So I understand where he was coming from for that. Right. So I
Absolutely.
think you got off on a tangent there, sir. Sorry about that, Jamie.
That's no, that's great. That we're here for tangents. We're here. We're
Okay.
all about the
Okay.
tangents, and that makes a lot of sense. Though, you don't want to see your child go through things that might hurt. However, you know that's going to happen, and it's something that is will eventually help them
Yeah.
with that.
I don't know if it's a biblical statement, but it's probably comes from it likely comes from that sentiment and time and frame, which would be spare the rod, spoil the child.
Yeah,
Right?
yeah,
Right.
and well, we see a lot of that kind of nowadays. To a
Yes, we
certain degree. There's it's
a lot of
there.
spoiled children. I mean, they're in their 30s and 40s, but a lot of spoiled children.
Yeah, yeah, and you're pretty sure that yeah, they hadn't been smacked yet. Otherwise, if they would, they might be a little bit easier to deal with.
Yeah, I picked up a saying from my best friend. You can never trust a man that's never been punched in the face. Right? They don't have any understanding of consequence. Right?
Yeah,
So
yeah.
to set the record straight for anybody who's listening that might know this, I have, however, cut myself practicing with live blades against other classmates and stuff. I remember this one guy he and I were talking, and I learned the importance of understanding the difference between hollow ground, flat ground, and round ground when it comes to the sharpened edge of a blade.
Hmm.
Right, and I'm like very much how should I say? I was very much believing in my own crap when it came to like, no, this technique works, this disarm works because I'd made the disarm work against a live blade, and my peer was like, no, you're wrong. It doesn't. I'm like, let's try it. And so he had a flat ground. I don't think he had a hollow ground. He had a flat ground spider cone. So spider cone as a brand of knife is most of their edges are flat ground. Most of my up until that day, all of my disarming with live blades, which we did very slow and we did very carefully, we weren't being rash, right? We were just trying to understand the technique in the context of an actual tool that would be used and how we would have to do things. And I think
Hmm.
that this lesson that I'm going to share with you is a very valuable lesson for me, though I would recommend that other people not do it because that would be the most responsible thing to do. So I'm like, let's do it. Right. And so, I catch the knife. He didn't go soft, but he didn't go really hard. So like I had to make sure the technique, the catch worked, the block or the defense worked. And then I began to apply the disarm. So spider codes are flat ground. All of the time before that, I've done this on a live blades, but they were round ground. Right. So there's a difference between hollow ground, flat ground, right, and round ground, right, in terms of like the shape of the edge at the edge.
Yeah.
Round ground edges, which is much more common with fighting tools, keep their edge longer, or rather keep the shape and form of the edge generally longer, easier to sharpen if you get them nicked. Hollow ground is the sharpest edge. You usually see that with scalpels and things like that because it's much sharper, finer, but it's easy to break that edge. That it's much more brittle. It's harder to, it's easier to dull, etc. Right?
Mm-hmm.
Most tools are flat ground, which means that you have just a regular on one side and then they just flat grind it on another until they get a sharp. Now, the difference between hollow ground and flat ground is they dig more into the thing that they're cutting, which would include flesh. So some of the flesh on blade disarms that you can do with round ground, which I had a lot of experience with, relatively speaking. I'm not saying I did thousands of disarms, but I
Sure.
did more than that, right? I could apply pressure a certain way with my hand or my skin, usually my forearm or something like that, and risk very little cutting. You can't do that with flat ground, and you cannot do that with hollow ground because it will dig into the flesh, because that's what it's made to do.